share information. They're very passionate about our environment. When we have the opportunity, and we're going to have the opportunity for an amazing national leader and voice, Angela Rye, to come up and be the moderator, and you're going to hear more from her. But there are some simple things that we want from our government. We want them to make sure, and we trust them, that when we turn on a drinking fountain, that our water is safe. Yeah. That when we buy food, that the food that we eat is safe for us to consume. And we also expect that the air that we breathe, that we will make sure that we have in place all the mechanisms, controls, and regulations so that breathing air will not make us sick. That's right. Or even harm us. And then I've added this. If we ask nothing else of our government, we want clean air, fresh water to drink, clean water. We want our food to be safe to consume, and we want our children educated. We want our children educated. And one of the things that we expect is that regardless of a child's income, their parents' income, the zip code that they live in, that they will be given the basic education, and I want to say basic, the best education possible for them to succeed. And it shouldn't be determined on how much money I have, so therefore I can buy it. Because a child's opportunity is not limited to an income or the environment that they're in. And that's another town hall meeting. But I want to say this topic is very important. Angela Rye has been very passionate, and I can tell you, Rashida has used her bullying platform, is that we are challenged in America. When we look at the most horrific environmental failures in our country, they are usually tied to low income and communities of color. And we need to own that and understand that and address that. The other thing that I want us to understand is that we had an election. And it took me some time, but I have embraced the fact that the President of the United States is Donald Trump. He is our president. Now, he has the responsibility to present a budget. I want you to pay attention to the budget, because the budget that he has proposed is a direct attack on environmental protections. It defund core programs and agencies. Defund, not reduce, it defunds to almost wipe them out. And he has promised more funding for clean water and infrastructure, but his budget only makes cuts. So we need to stay, the saying, stay woke. We need to stay aware and involved so we can use our voice and stay diligent and push Congress, me, I'm included, to say stand up and fight against this because it impacts all of us. The funding impacts directly because we are the Great Lakes. We are the largest clean water body in the world. And he has his funding, deep funding, directly impact the Great Lakes. Now you want to talk about something, how powerful this is? We have bipartisan support to fight the president. The Republicans are standing up saying no, not in Michigan. We cannot do this. Also, his promise for jobs, stay woke. When he says they're bringing jobs back, he has not been in office 100 days. His policies has not brought back a single job in this country. But he's taking credit for the momentum that was started from the past administration. I want you to know that there is a fight. There is a fight in Washington, and I can tell you I'm part of that. You saw we had to fight for Flint. That was not an easy thing to do. I was told, and some of you know this, as a freshman, that I needed to be quiet and sit down, that I recognized that I was in the minority and that I was a freshman. Who did I think I was? Demanding that we have a hearing about the Flint water situation. I want you to know, I just had conversations with Washington and my staff. We need to investigate why in the world was a customer, American citizen, dragged off a plane that they bought a ticket for and was seated and was dragged off that plane. There are times when you have to stand up and fight. I don't care what the establishment say, right is right, wrong is wrong. And if we in America want this country to be the home of the brave, land of the free, one nation under God, then we're going to have to fight for liberty and justice for all. And I want you to know, I'll roll up my sleeve. I was born and raised in the city of Detroit. I have no problem fighting, and I will continue to do that for you. I want to thank you so much for coming. I want you to know the fight continues, stay engaged, and we need to work to take back our environment. Because you know what? Some of us have been stuck in there for a long time on this earth. And we had some rights and freedoms and lack of pollution that didn't exist that our babies, this next generation, are confronting. So some of you may talk to friends and go like, why are you fighting so hard for clean water? You know, our water is okay. Why are you fighting so hard for air? This next generation, and I'm praying, won't suffer under what we allow to happen with our environment. And if someone stood up for our rights and freedoms before some of us were even born, and what will history say about us at this very challenging time in our history? What did we do? Where's your name on the list that you stood up and you did not tolerate injustice? You did not tolerate an attack on our environment. And I want you all to know I'm so proud that you're there to make sure your name is on that list, that I did not sit back and let it happen. I took action. And so I want to thank you so much. I want to introduce our moderator, and I'm just going to give you a little bit about Angela Rye. She is the principal and CEO of Impact Strategies. She is a CNN political commentator. We see her often, and I just love you. She is an NPR political analyst. She has been featured as an influential political lawyer and advocate for several publications around the country. She served as executive director of general counsel to the Congressional Black Caucus in the 112th Congress. In her role as executive director, she was tasked with developing the overall legislation and political strategy. Prior to working for the CBC, she served as a senior advisor and counsel to the House Committee on Homeland Security. So I know you're very involved in what's happening now. And under the leadership of Congressman Benny Thompson, she co-founded Impact, an organization that seeks to encourage young professionals in 3 core areas: economic empowerment, civic engagement, and political involvement. She's a graduate of the University of Washington and Seattle University School of Law. Let's welcome amazing Angela Rye. I want to recognize one of our council members that walked in. Raquel, where are you? There she is, Councilwoman Raquel.
Let's give your Congresswoman another round of applause. She had a way when she was reading my bio. She said the CBC talks. They ran circles around me. I learned a lot with the members. And even though I didn't have the privilege of working for and with Congresswoman Lawrence, I certainly have adopted her as part of the CBC family, and she's adopted me too. So I take back our environment. For those of you who are on social media, for those of you who are not, you can just stay woke, as Congresswoman Lawrence suggested. That is going to be the running theme, not just of this town hall, but probably for the rest of this guy's, I still have a hard time calling him my president. This guy's almost 4 years we have left. 83 days, and it feels like a lifetime, doesn't it? So, on a happier note, we have some brilliant, and amazing experts on all things environmental justice, climate change, and healthy communities before us today. I will introduce the panelists briefly and then allow them to go right into opening statements, which will be about 2 to 3 minutes. We're going to try to keep them short so we can jump right into questions. And then we're going to open up, we're going to just try to keep the floor open so that you all feel like this is a dialogue. As Congresswoman Lawrence said, these town halls are for you. But as she also said, her role is one that she needs to ensure that she's representing your voice. And so hearing from you all, your questions and your thoughts, and any concerns that you might have is about environmental justice and what's happening in the environment. Like, what is this guy doing? We welcome those questions as well. So that's it. I first want to welcome Jonathan Martinez, who's a research assistant from Wayne State Center for Urban Studies. Welcome, Jonathan. I'm not going in order, so if you just wave so they know who you are, that would be great. We also have Dorothea Thomas, who is with the Sierra Club Michigan chapter, and she serves as the Detroit and Great Lakes organizer. She's on top of it. I heard her on a conference call earlier, and she is an organizer. Let me tell you, I know she probably didn't know I was listening to it, but she's together, so I'm expecting her to give us some great marching orders this evening. We also have Rashida Talib, who is an attorney with Sugar Law Center for Economic and Social Justice, and some of you will recognize her as a former state representative from the Michigan House of Representatives. Let's give Rashida a round of applause. And last but certainly not least, so this is probably where we're going to start with our opening statements, is Guy Williams, who serves as the president and CEO for the Detroiters Working for Environmental Justice, and I will now ensure that Mr. Williams has the floor. Thank you so much for welcoming Mr. Williams.
You're the slowest talking guy that was saying I was starting fast, huh? Anyway, I'm excited to be here. I see a mixture of faces I've known for many years and worked with, and many I've never seen. What's touching me though today is I'm reminded of how I got involved in this work around environmental justice in 1990, touring Cancer Alley in Louisiana with Paul Nohai, who's a local professor, and other folks, and learning for the first time with shock and amazement about the impact of petrochemical plants and their emissions on cancer rates, respiratory diseases, and so forth. And my experience in that trip evolved into a transformation for me and really my a spiritual awakening on how to spend my time for the rest of my career. So for 20-some years, I've been working to find solutions to the environmental injustices. And on the one hand, I'm sad to say, we still need to be out here fighting and staying woke. One of the first lessons I learned, though, is that there's a whole set of rules. Some of you I know already know this, but I want to speak to voting, right? The government, from the federal level down, sets the rules, and the rules that are in place right now are the ones that are guaranteeing the conditions we have right now. If we want it to be different, we've got to kick up our game and bring our fight. Everybody has something to bring. You either have intellect, passion, connections, some experience. We've got to focus, I think, among other things, on turning out a vote 2 years from now that flips these legislative bodies that are locking down the bad policies and keeping us in bad air, bad water, and dirty land.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Now we have Attorney General
Hello, everyone. It's really wonderful to see so many folks out here that have been really involved on, our right to clean air and drinking water and all those things. I'm really, really happy to see everybody still so active. So a lot of you know that I was born and raised in Southwest Detroit, which has a tremendous amount of challenges when it comes to polluting industry. And I think a lot of my friends, even from Southwest, would know that we thought that smell was normal. We thought this many trucks was normal until you leave and come back, or until, you run into organizers like Rhonda Anderson with the Sierra Club of Detroit, who's doing a White Cross campaign, and you're like, oh my God, this many people are dying of cancer. So it's really wide opening, and even as I went into the legislature, I never ever thought I was going to work on education and all those things, and I did. But I didn't think I was going to be only one of maybe 2 of the 110 members of the legislature fighting on environmental justice issues. And so, right away, and I know my fellow panelists will tell you, Michigan Department of Environmental Quality just regulates pollution. They don't prevent it, they regulate it. I learned that early on. Not only that, I also learned that the private companies are the ones who do their own testing. They hire out the contract and they do the testing, they submit that to the state. Again, the lack of trust, I think, with our own state environmental protection agency and so forth is high. And that's why I'm really proud of Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence. I mean, she's one of very few that still works on environmental justice issues, that still talks about these issues, even when everybody wants to talk about the other issues. It impacts education and how kids learn. It impacts so much of our day-to-day life and other budgets. So I'm really proud that our Congresswoman is working on these issues. The other thing too is, now we're talking more about this, and I told this to Angela Wright, that, the storage of petroleum coke on the riverfront, I mean, that's not gonna go away, the coke storage. And I know all of you are like, well, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, EPA said it's not toxic. Well, guess what? It used to be on the list until the industry lobbied it off the list. So stay woke, stay conscious of the fact that, it's not intended by the bureaucrats that work here. I mean, I've met so many great people that work for the EPA, that listen to us, work for the MDEQ, that listen to us. But what I'm hoping today at the town hall is that, and Angela said this to us before, is you're gonna walk away with phone numbers, with next action. It can be exhausting, but if you're not doing it, we're never gonna get pet coke back on the list. We're never gonna be able to fight back on the water shutoffs and everything. And I'll talk more about that. And at the Sugar Law Center for Economic and Social Justice, it gets to a point where we hit the wall, and we have to file a lawsuit. I mean, Bridgewatch Detroit said we'll be the plaintiffs, and because of the nuisance of the the black cloud coming off of Detroit River near the Fort Wayne industry. And it's just ridiculous how there is a free for all when it comes to industry. There are sustainable business practices. Cover it up. There are sustainable business practices. Stop shutting people's water off, because guess what? When you shut their water off, it impacts my health. Studies are already coming out saying that. So it's really, really important that we stay woke, and I'm really, really happy that Congresswoman Lawrence is making this the top issue for her. And she knows, I love it when people have the courage to stand up to a big industry like this, because somebody has to. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor to be here. I, as well, was raised and still live here in Southwest, so I'm very aware of all the daily environmental issues that we have to face. I've had family members and friends who have asthma, who have been lead poisoned, so I definitely understand all of the things we face every day. And I was lucky enough to get a position at the Center for Urban Studies, where I'm able to help the members of my community. We go to homes and we try to target the health and safety hazards like asthma triggers and sources of lead within their homes. And once again, it's just an honor, and thank you for having me.
The queen of organizing in this space. Yes, ma'am.
First, I would like to thank Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence for this wonderful opportunity and for putting together this environmental justice town hall. Like she stated, we have 23% of the world's freshwater resource. And it's just a shame that we have a president that wants to completely eliminate the Great Lakes Restorative Initiative and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Also, I want to thank you, Angela Rye, for being here and making sure that our voices are heard. I am Dorothea Thomas. Not only am I the Detroit Great Lakes organizer for the Sierra Club Michigan chapter, I'm a published author, a motivational speaker, and a certified life coach. My whole purpose in life is to uplift and inspire people to create the changes they want to see in this world. I grew up in 48217, which was Southwest Detroit, one of the most polluted zip codes in Michigan, and the third most in the nation. My freshman year in college, my grandmother was diagnosed with 3 very rare forms of cancer. And one of the things the doctors told us is if we lived in a cleaner, healthier environment, it would prolong her life. That year, she had to choose if she wanted to invest in my education or she wanted to take her money and pay for medication and move away from the city. She ended up passing away that year. The very same year, I was diagnosed with a very rare eye disease. It's called scleritis. Inflammation of the sclera is directly correlated to the carbon atmospheric conditions of your environment. My doctor responded and told me that there was no cure, and he said one day you could just wake up blind. He said you have to be aware of the toxins in your environment, and all I can do is tell you to pray. That was my doctor telling me to pray. So what do I do now as an organizer? I organize people and I organize money to build political power in Detroit, Flint, Grand Rapids, and Traverse City to not only protect our water, but protect our air, protect our communities, and push for a just transition into a clean energy economy. How do I do this? There's 3 things that I focus on. I focus on de-siloing the work. Too often when you hear about environmental issues, you don't talk about social justice issues. This is a social justice issue. I work to make those connections of clean air, clean water, clean land, and healthy communities for all. Also, I make sure that everything that I do is intergenerational. I'm not just fighting for the legacy of my grandmother. I'm a millennial. I'm fighting for myself, and also I'm pregnant with my child. I'm fighting for my unborn daughter. So when little Dorothea is born, she can say, what did you do to protect my environment? And I can tell her, I did absolutely everything I could for me, you, and your grandmother. And last but not least, I work to make sure that our communities are self-determined. Not only do I organize in my city of Detroit, but I organize across this entire state, and I make sure that I make those connections that are not only national, but international. We are in a state of emergency, a state of a crisis, and we need more Congress people, men and women like Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, who will stand up for us. We need more people who can organize a community and give them the power that they need to make those changes. So I'm just grateful to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you. What did I tell y'all about Dorothea? I'm telling you, watch for her. She's coming. She's good. If all the millennials are like Dorothea, we're in good hands. Is that right? Okay, I hope you all see it. I see it, Dorothea. I appreciate what you said. I want to just take a step back for a moment. One, I think we should definitely appreciate the fact that we have some folks who are educated on climate change issues, on environmental justice issues, on how they directly impact our health, our communities, our resources, but we also have to acknowledge what's happening on a national level, right? I think it's very important that we just set that stage briefly, and we're going to get right back to the panel and how things impact you all in your communities, which is why you all are here tonight. Again, we started, we said he's been in office 83 days. Somebody say 83 days. 83 days. I know, I didn't want to say it either, but it is 83 days, and that's it. And I think it's important for us to understand what he's done already. So the Trump administration has to spend some time over the next couple of days figuring out how they're going to message what his first 100 days have been in terms of accomplishments. You can't have accomplishments if everything you've done has decimated communities. So one of the things that he did initially was guide back some regulations that were put in place by the Obama administration that give us environmental protections. They didn't want staff at EPA using words like, or phrases like climate change, despite the fact that those of us who are wiser know that it's a real thing. And then the other thing that's happened that I think is important, and Congresswoman Lawrence hinted at this, is the cuts to the Environmental Protection Agency's budget. One of the things that you all should be very concerned about, one of the hardest hit programs is the Great Lakes Restoration Program. There were 71.7 overall full-time employment equivalents. So that means 71 staffers who handle that specific issue that is directly related to what some of your panelists work on every day. That has been cut in his proposed budget. That is very, very problematic and has a direct implication on what happens here in Detroit. I think the other thing that's important to note is they didn't cut everything at EPA. And this has not been reported as much. There was a piece on it in the Washington Post and some progressive rags. The EPA administrator, knowing he's doing some crazy stuff, has requested more security. This is not a joke. So the money that's being taken from the Great Lakes Restoration Program and some of the other programs that they've cut, they're filtering some of those resources to double his security detail. So he has 24-hour bodyguards. Yeah, okay, well think about that. The other thing that I want to do, just to switch gears, I think it was important to kind of lay that groundwork, right, and talk about briefly what is happening with the Great Lakes Restoration Program through Donald Trump's proposed EPA budget. But I also think it would be good for us to understand who we're speaking to. I know Rashida mentioned there are some familiar faces in the audience, so that might be you all are already climate change, environmental justice advocates. But maybe there are some of you here, so we should focus group this really quickly, who don't know. And you're saying, I want to know how this impacts me and why I should care. Is there anybody here like that? Or you all feel like you already know? That's good. Okay, so we'll move right along. Let's switch gears again. And I think that what I wanted to get to, Guy, you talked about health a little bit. You talked about petrochemicals and the impact on cancer rates. Dorothea, you just mentioned something with your own body, your grandmother's body, and the fact that pollution cost her life, right? So I want us to talk briefly about some of the things that may have been underreported, maybe things that this audience doesn't know as much about relative to pollution, healthcare, those implications, and how, Rashida, I would love for you to talk about this part, how overwhelmingly those are concerns for poorer communities, impoverished communities, communities with less resources, and why we still don't have a choice but to fight. So whoever wants to start, and I also, Jonathan, I know you as well have some things that you can address relative to asthma and lead poisoning.
I'll kick it off, and I also want to thank Congresswoman Lawrence for taking us in and elevating the priority of these issues. And she asked me to make sure to give people something to do next. So I have one thing to do next. It's Tuesday morning. If you can come out to the Delray Community Center, there's a whole public action plan for clean air and healthy environment that's getting released. It's been vetted through community members across the city. It's spearheaded by a partnership with the University of Michigan, Public Health, my organization, Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation, Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision, and others. And some of the data we have there that we're going to be talking about, for example, did you know that close to 700 people a year in the Metro Detroit area die due to air pollution, respiratory issues? Did you know that more than $6 billion of productivity and lost work and school time is happening in our area, right? So the pervasiveness and the impact of bad environment is from top to bottom through our quality of life. It's getting to work, getting to school. I mean, a lot of you are living down in this part of the city where the burden is day in, day out. I'm not telling you anything. Looking at Teresa here, we were at a meeting this morning at the first statewide Governor's Environmental Justice Work Group. Hopefully that'll turn into something that creates leverage, right? As well. So we'd love to see people come out, get more information about how you can take a stand for cleaner air locally on Tuesday morning. And I'll give it
There's a couple of things that I want to address, especially when it comes to our water. So everyone here, I'm pretty sure, heard about the Flint water crisis and what transpired over the past 3+ years and how they don't have water currently, and it's been 2 years. But a lot of people don't know that Detroit actually has 3 times more lead pipes than Flint. A lot of people don't know that our infrastructure is so old. We still have pipes made of wood. And a lot of people don't know that we have a hazardous waste facility that is dumping 13,000 tons of hazardous fracking waste that contains arsenic, cyanide, and other different poisons into our water a day, and they want to expand it to 300,000 tons. So how does that connect all together? So what happens when our outdated infrastructure starts to corrode and that lead leaks into our water? What kind of public health crisis will occur where 10 times the people that were poisoned, which was 100,000 people, that same thing occurs in Detroit? One of the things that I really want to address and I really want to talk about is how we talk about air pollution in Detroit, but we are currently inheriting a water crisis too. As we all know, just a few weeks ago, for 3 days, because of a water issue, many of us couldn't use our water. We couldn't drink it, we couldn't bathe, we couldn't do anything for 3 to 4 days. So what happens when infrastructure fail completely impacts the entire city? There are connections that are being made connected to the water shutoff crisis that says if you live on a block where one person water has been shut off, you are 7 to 8 times more likely to get a food or waterborne disease. Some of these diseases haven't been heard of in America or even in some third world countries for decades. And this is real. This is something that is happening. We're in a part of our history where we have to think of a next generation of infrastructure. We have to think of a next generation of energy production and use. We have to think of a next generation way of living and being and surviving and sustaining ourselves. Sustainability isn't just about protecting the trees, it's about actually surviving in society. What are we going to do when we rely so much on the government to make sure we have clean water, clean air, and clean land, and that government fails us? Where he looks at us and he tells us, despite what's happening in our communities, I will completely eliminate your protections and regulations. But we have to start being self-determined in the things that we do, and we have to hold our government accountable. We have to organize our communities, we have to connect with one another. So those are some of the things that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people also don't know that Detroit operates with a combined sewer overflow system. So what does that mean? It means that our sewer and wastewater, our runoff, our wastewater runoff from storms is connected. So what happens when we have high rain? What happens when we have storms, which are only going to get worse because of climate change? It means that our sewer system overflows, raw sewage runs into the Detroit River, connects to the Lake Erie, and creates large crises, like water crisis, like what happened in Ohio with the toxic algal bloom. That affects drinking water for millions of people. What does that mean? That means that water will become a commodity. In 5 years, just 5 years from now, another fact, 1/3 of Americans are expected not to afford water. That's just an expectation. It could be more. That could be just the number that they're reporting right now. So as Detroiters, people who are indigenous and native to a city that is surrounded by the Great Lakes, we have to start thinking about the quality of our land. Also, this could be an immigration issue too. What happens when places like California or Florida receive droughts and they can't have access to clean water? Where would they go? Detroit, Michigan? Michigan will be one of the #1 places in the world to live when disasters happen because of climate change, when crises happen because of climate change. And if we're not looking at all these issues in a very connected and intentional way and being inclusive of all voices, we are in some deep struggle. And we have to connect across borders, across genders, across religions, across generations and say enough is enough.
Well, I was speaking to one of the hidden environmental hazards within Detroit. As many of you know, lead is currently a big problem. What's on everyone's mind is lead in water, but what people don't think about very much is lead in paint. Since the 1920s, the government has known, or early 1900s, the government has known that lead was a hazard, and they did not outlaw it until 1975. That means that 95% of the homes within Detroit were built before 1975, and the majority of those homes have probably not been lead abated. Within Detroit, it was found that 60% of students who performed below the average standardized level had lead poisoning as children. And this is something that many residents within Detroit do not have the funds to abate or to address. So we need some sort of funding and education in order to ensure that children do not get poisoned. In Detroit alone, in 2015, over 1,200 kids were poisoned. That's twice as many kids that were poisoned in Flint due to the Flint water crisis. This is a problem that is affecting our children's IQ. It increases the likelihood that the children would end up in jail. It causes inactiveness, hyperactivity, disorganization, aggression, and increased risk of delinquency. Lead is a huge problem, and it has been affecting our children and our ability to educate them for many years, and we need to find a solution.
So I have a lot of actions for you all. So I have an amazing state representative, Stephanie Chang, who really wanted to be on this panel. And I know she works very, very closely with Congresswoman Lawrence. And as a former mayor, Congressman Lawrence knows there's a tremendous amount of power here at the local level. And I want folks to remember that with the legislature, but also here at City Council and with the mayor. We have a tremendous amount of power over land use and so forth. So Detroit in itself, we house the largest. I mean, some people say it might not be, but it is pretty remarkable how large our water treatment plant is. How many of you gone over 75 and smelled it? You know what I'm talking about. And so a lot of various cities have been able to upgrade a lot of those infrastructures. And it's very difficult now, post, getting rid of earmarks and things like that, to really get focused on those kinds of infrastructure needs. So 70 municipalities and 4 of the largest counties in the state flushed their toilet, and it comes right here in the backyard of one of the most challenging communities in Detroit, and that's Delray. And not only on top of that, you heard from so many people on the panel about the impact of that with our drinking water. So be conscientious of that. You may think, well, that's not my problem. Well, if that goes down, your drinking water is going to be an issue. So be conscientious when we talk about that. Just because the zip code is not your zip code, don't think it doesn't impact you at all. The other really important thing is, as State Representative Stephanie Chang, she has a list of, she's freaking amazing, I love her, has a list of all the environmental bills that she's been working on. And one of them that is very important is covering of petroleum coke. So a lot of you may not know, but Marathon Oil is the only petroleum refinery in the state, is right here in Detroit, in the district. And one of the things that you should know about them is they expanded in 2007-8. And when they expanded, they created this coker. It looks like NASA over there, Angela, you should see it. And but in a negative way, actually. So, so there is this huge facility, and you see it, and they're producing these little pebbles. It's a form of energy, and they're burning it for energy. And they're coke products. They'll call it petroleum coke, meta coke. They'll call it any kind of, I don't care if they call it, I told them, you can call it milkshake coke, I don't care. The point being is, when it's on the riverfront waiting for those big ships to come and pick it up, it's blowing everywhere. You can just research it and see just how tremendous the impact is. But Chicago, other communities have been able to pass ordinances that say, there's a sustainable business practice. Sure, it may cost you money. Then charge the customer, which means the Koch brothers, charge the Koch brothers a little bit more. I think they can sell enough products of theirs to be able to afford it. We should not pay the toll or the cost on our public health. And so this is something that Sugar Law Center, many of our partners at the Great Lakes Law Center, we are paying very close attention to, because we think it's going to be a big issue. Most of us have been waiting and hoping for the west side of the riverfront to be redeveloped similar to the east side. It's beautiful, and that's what we want to be extended onto the west side. And so we all ask you guys to be conscientious of that. And again, there's a bill. What I love about, well, what the positive things of gerrymandering is, there actually is one little positive thing, right, Congresswoman, is that we share, you know, all of us don't share the same state representative or state senator. There's probably over a dozen people here with different state reps and state senators. So when Representative Chang is introducing a bill, I need you all to be saying, what, are you going to support this bill? This bill needs to happen. Like cumulative impact analysis. How many of you know that when one company applies for an air permit, they're just looking at that source that's coming out there, not looking at the combined, looking at the impact combined with the other outputs from the companies. And those are things that we should be able to ask the industries to pay for. And again, this is a bill that's been introduced by her. I'm really a proponent of it because I always felt alone fighting these issues because everybody else had all their issues they're working on. But this is something that you all simple email to your legislators and you can really, really fight for this stuff. Did you all also know, this is crazy, Angela, I found this out. So when you build a house, you can't build it on contaminated property. It has to be fully clean. But you can build a school on contaminated property. Yep. It's crazy. So they did this in Westland. They closed down the school. They did it in Detroit. We sued them, and now they just put a bunch of soil on top of it. We have to check every 6 months, if they even have the resources, check every 6 months. People told me, oh, it was just something that was overlooked. Well, I still haven't been able to get anybody on the Senate side to actually pass this bill to say that it has to have the same standards as a house. And so these, again, are bills in the state legislature that we can fight for and support Representative Chang and others that are supporting the bill. So please do take the time to take these. Again, it's going to be a hell of a fight for Congresswoman Warren's for some of the larger issues around climate change, around restoration of some of our environmental protections and budgets. But these are things that we can do here locally and fight for locally. Last but not least, there is a magnet. This magnet was this small and has transformed into a phenomenal thing where if you want to report illegal truck traffic, if you want to report a smell, if you want to report, or if you want to call the EPA region, a lot of them don't get calls from us. Your region area, you can call them and report different things and different things that are going on. They actually have investigators that go out and check these things. If you don't call, nobody knows it happened. It didn't happen. And I constantly try to remind people. But again, please do that. The other, one more last thing, Angela, is how many of you are like, yes, tear down those houses, blight, handle the blight. Well, asbestos was a huge issue. It's done. But it was a huge issue, and I think locally here, we could have spoken up and said things more about, you know, protection, and everybody just thought we were crazy. Oh, they would never tear down houses and not deal with asbestos. Well, they did, because guess what? The city government's not doing it. They're contracting those out. They're contracting those that work out. So when you see somebody working on the lights, don't assume that's our own city private, public companies. It's a private company doing it. When somebody's tearing down a house, that is not our own city employees doing it. And it's not a union thing, trust me. It's more of the fact of accountability. There's a step removed from us in these private companies who are really held accountable by those in City Hall. So be conscientious of that and be aware. And sign up for Stephanie Chang's emails, newsletters. There's some information out there. I know Congresswoman Warren sends out emails constantly about what's going on in D.C. So I really encourage you to be awoke and to stand up for these issues and connect them to the other issues that you're working on. Like, I mean, you said it. It's connected to education, connected to so much of poverty going on and so many things that we all live day to day. Thank you, Angela, for your time.
Thank you. So we have a few audience questions. And thank you all for handing in the note cards. If you have a question that you have filled out, just hold your hand up and a member of Congresswoman Lawrence's team will come by and get it. And so the first question I want to ask, I am partial to because it has to do with action. What the folks sitting in these chairs can go forth and do when they leave here. And so this is for whoever can answer this. If we could do one or two answers for each one, that would be great. Just so that we can get the other questions answered. This is, what can be done to ensure that entities with deep pockets are not in a position to pollute our water, air, and land.
Well, I'm a lawyer, I'm like, sue them, but we don't always have the resources to sue them. Because, you know, a lot of our basic rights, from civil rights movement to all these movements, a lot of them won in the courts. But sometimes that's not going to be possible because our courts now they've gotten the alert, the understanding that they have now put some of the most conservative people in our courts. Some of the most conservative judges are now making decisions that are going to impact us for decades. Look, the one thing is needs to be an assumption. Look, you don't have to be, oh no, you're lying right away, right? It's about listening, but then at the same time going after them and holding them accountable for actions they made mistakes. So for instance, so many people tell me, I'm friends with Waterfront Petroleum. They're such great people. Great, the lawyer's nice. Okay, the owner did some really great contributions to the community. But you know what? They need to take it a step further because it is our public health. And there's some things that you just can't give up. You can't compromise on certain things like that, especially because it's not going to shut down your businesses for them to take that extra step. If it's been done in Chicago, then why can't it be done in Detroit? And so I say, Angela, like, raise the bar of what we deserve. We deserve respect. And put your mommy and daddy issues together. So many people want the head of the CEO. They walk in and they're like, Rashida, oh my God, Mr. Maroon's here. Oh my God, this person's here. And they want to take it. And I'm like, but that's the same guy that's rerouting the trucks in your neighborhood. But at the same time, they're all upset, right? But just be understanding that, you know, you don't need their approval. You don't need them to be like, they may dislike you for telling the truth, but they actually expect it. No matter what, they expect us to say covered up. They expect us to say have truck routes. And so, but there's not enough of us speaking up against them, and it just takes a lot of courage. And I'm not against, maybe Congressman Lawrence might want to join me once or twice, against civil disobedience. Sometimes it will take blocking of trucks, and sometimes it will take, going into one of their board meetings, or, having constant pressers out there to show what's going on. And the best thing I've ever seen people in Southwest Detroit, especially families, even on the east side, is do tours of the community with these particular folks, the city council members, with the developers, with the folks that own these companies. Show them what the impact is on the ground.
So really quick, we have an illustrious panelist who's joined us, your Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, who also may want to chime in here. I think it's important for the organizers on this panel, right, to talk about actions that these folks can take very succinctly, very clearly, what are 1 or 2 or 3 things they can do in response to these polluters who they think have, a lot of money to spend. How can they respond when they feel outspent? They know they don't have those same resources. What can they do?
I'm going to get redundant here a little bit because these are, get your magnets too, make sure you get your magnets. And I'm serious about that. We have to speak up. We also need to have information to use when we speak up. And the thing is, these situations tend to be very complicated. They seem simple, but we're a law-abiding country for the most part. It's the bad actors we tend to focus on and think about. My experience, though, is not so much the bad actors, it's that what's common is killing us. The standard practice, no matter what, in certain industries, is going to be killing us. And the only way I know that we can change that is to stand up, get educated, and fight back, and speak up, and get the laws changed. And that's why it's such a blessing to have lawmakers like Congresswoman Lawrence, Representative Consuelo Lopez, or Councilwoman Consuelo Lopez, and Representative Chang that you have here. They are super on the target. The thing is, they're very much outnumbered in their respective bodies. We have to mobilize not only ourselves, but our friends and family everywhere. We've got to turn this around politically as well as take it at the grassroots level. That's my thought.
So we have to build political power. And how do you build political power? Organized money plus organized people equals political power. And we all know that when you take a public good and you make it for private interest, it becomes about the profit and not the people or the planet. And so the things that we need to do and the things that I've done in the past before I even became an organizer and I just wanted to speak out is I began to talk to medical professionals, like my doctor. I told him I need my diagnosis and I need for it to show that this is directly correlated to what's happening in my environment. We also see an example of Dr. Mona Atisha, where she also announced the record of public health cases connected to the lead water. Also, we need to work with researchers. We need to connect with our local universities, like Jonathan at Wayne State University, who will present the research and the scientific background about these environmental hazards in our community. And just for example, what happened in Flint? Virginia Tech was actually the academic institution that said, these are the elevated lead levels in this city, and this is why it's happening, and this is how it's connected. And so once we begin to make those connections, once we begin to speak out and tell our stories, the next step you contact your elected official. They like to hear personal stories. I believe Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence will even tell you sometimes those personal stories that you bring from home are way more powerful than those corporate stories. And how you do this, you connect with other people in your neighborhood, in your community, and other organizations who have the same agenda that you do, and you tell them, this is what we should do. And Sierra Club, Michigan chapter, our organization is ran grassroots. It's the committees, it's the people on the ground, the volunteers who bring their stories, who bring the academic research from their local institutions, who work with engineers and scientists and say, this is what's happening, this is how it's connected to my story, and this is what we need to change. And once you do that, you build political power. There's power in numbers. The many of us can defeat the few of them, but we have to do it strategically. We have to communicate with one another. We have to build that community resilience. So often you hear about resistance during this political time. Resistance is real, resilience is real, but we have to do it strategically, and we have to take those measures and precautions that we use, the different resources that we have to actually create those changes, and it's possible. And I'll just go back to it one more time. How you build political power and how you make changes with organized people and organized money. And if you don't have money, you better have people. And if you can do both with a couple dollars from each one of those people who's organizing that institution or organizing your community, it might outweigh those dollars of those corporate polluters and also those industries that want to damage your community for a profit.
Thank you. We have another question. I think we're kind of in the same vein, and it's understanding that environmental justice is often an issue of safe, drinkable water. What advice would you offer in combating the polluting of Lake Erie because of toxic algae from corn ethanol production? Thank you, Keith, for your question.
I am going to weigh in. This is a response to the last question as well. We all know all politics are local, so all the pollution is not happening in Washington, D.C. But you all are our government. You send people to Washington, and they sit there and they make laws. Let's be very clear. When you tell a company that if every manufacturer has some form of waste. So if you, in the process of disposing of your waste, we're going to say, it's okay, put it in the water. If that's going to save you money and increase your profit margin, it's okay. And that's what you've heard me talking about in this budget that's being proposed, where we are all the successes we made. And Sierra Club, I have to give them so much credit. They are relentless in making sure lawmakers understand the impact of our disrespecting, I call it, our environment, harming our environment, or putting toxins into our air and our waters, having on our personal health and on our environment overall. But we must, and I'm just going to say, everyone has said it, repeat it, we must understand that all politics are local. Look at the movement we've had where there's been demands in all of the congressional districts, Republican and Democrat, that you come and you assemble, allow us to assemble so you can hear what our concerns are. We want you to know we support what you're doing or we don't support. That is extremely important. It doesn't cost you a dime, it just costs you a little time and what I say, compassion enough for this country to say I'm going to be involved and you're going to hear me. But it is extremely important, that information piece, what you're learning here today empowers you when you contact your legislators, when you're talking to those disbelievers, when you're educating others, is the fact that you're getting the information, statistics, and facts. It's not a person on this panel, including me, and my staff is here, and I'm going to introduce them shortly, that we will not show up and support anyone that wants to join this fight in protecting our environment. So please understand, the laws are being made in Washington. If you say, oh, that's just a bill that's passed, if there's a law that's being passed in Lansing, oh, it's just a bill. No, that's a direct impact on your community. Fracking. We had a situation in Southfield where they wanted to frack in our neighborhoods, and the community came out in masses, and we fought against them. We said, you know, we don't want fracking in our community. We know that the Rouge River and all these waters flowing through our community in Southfield, Michigan. But there are laws. The EPA came out and told us the law allows any company to frack if they're within so many feet of a private residence. It was horrible. That directly goes back to what we're talking about. When we start talking about state laws, and when we hear about our federal government reducing and relaxing regulations on environmental controls, that's eventually going to end up in your neighborhood. And that's why we have to fight that on that level.
So I like the fact that so many of you are asking questions of the panel, and most of them are starting with what can we do? And so I want to shift to the next what can we do. This is from folks who live in Farmington Hills, and they say, what can we do to help promote environmental justice? If we have limited resources or time, what should our priority be? Clean air, clean water, or something else? I think it's good, it's good to, you may not know the answer, but it's probably good to wrestle with it in here. If this is a family discussion and we want to leave here with marching orders, we can solve something right here. You guys can have a debate about if this is right, or be like, listen, all those are top priorities.
I'm going to just say this and give it to the experts. Every last one of you have a mayor and a city council that you elect. You should have someone going to every single council meeting, watching every single vote, and what are your laws and regulations on the environment in your community. So if you're in Farmington Hills, if you have the Rouge River runs through Farmington Hills, I'm pretty sure. What are you doing to protect the Rouge River? When you need to know what is our air quality in the city of Farmington Hills. What companies in our city emits, has toxins or whatever, have their air quality. What is our air quality in Farmington Hills? What are we doing? We have a tree ordinance, and I'm pretty sure Farmington Hills had it when I was mayor, saying that every tree that's removed, you have to replace it so that we can keep that ecosystem correct in our city so that we're not contributing to the carbon footprints. There are so many things that you can do. You can start or demand that in your cities that you have an environmental committee, that there is a committee of residents, like you have the historic committee, you have the neighborhood association committee, you have the senior, you have the veterans committee. Demand that your city has an environmental, whatever you want to name it, environmental support, environmental quality, committee of residents that you can sit down and make sure that you're being a watchdog of your environment and your committee, and make sure that in that, forming that you are required once a year to give a report, a public report, to your city council, so it'll be televised, it'll be reported. It shouldn't be a backroom committee that you just meet, no one knows what you're saying. It should be an annual report given publicly to your city council so that your neighbors know about it. But there are things that you can do.
Yes.
So to the question about which environmental issue you should focus on, you should really study your area. And here in Detroit, I would say air would be slightly more worrisome than water. And there's this great website called airnow.gov where you can see every day what the quality of air is in your area. So if you know someone with asthma, please let them know, because right there you can kind of ensure that that person does not go out. But in Detroit, we do have some of the best water sanitation in the world. There could be lead in the water due to local exposure. But I would again focus on what is the environmental issue within your community that affects the members in your community the most. And Detroit, Metro Detroit is the fourth most challenging place in the United States to live with asthma, and that is unacceptable, and that affects our children and our community members every day. And we need to make sure that our Congress members and our community and everyone is aware of this. Airnow.gov.
I guess my opinion is a little bit different. No matter where you come from, I believe that you should not silo work whatsoever. I believe that you should make those issues interconnected, because that's what the opposition wants you to do. Divided people is easily defeated. So if you have these people fighting over here for air and these people fighting over here for water, you easily become basically targets against one another. You become opposition against one another. And when it comes to water, yes, we know that 48217 is one of the most contaminated and polluted cities of Michigan in the third of the nation. However, it's also connected to water. Did you know that Enbridge Line 5 ships crude oil all the way to Marathon in 48217? And so they are major contributors to the air pollution. Not only if that pipe breaks, Great Lakes is completely destroyed. You know, these issues are definitely connected. And so some of the things that you can do if you don't have money, like you said, or maybe you're not mobile, you can write a letter to your editor. You know, when you read an article in the newspaper that tells you something tragic has happened, you respond to that editor and say, I'm a part of this community, and yes, I want to speak out, or I live near this community. You can also create phone banking opportunities with your residents and your neighbors, where you can just call your elected official, like State Representative Stephanie Chain, who just introduced a water quality, affordability, and accessibility bill package. Those are 23 resolutions in one bill package that if you just say, I support this, I care about my drinking water, I care about the quality, the affordability, the accessibility of it, you just made a significant difference in your community. Another thing that you need to do, and I heard Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence say, that you can actually demand to have boards that hold your elected officials accountable locally. For the first time in history, residents have stood up and demanded that the mayor office create an office of sustainability. An office of sustainability that looks at all of these issues, because Detroit is heavily polluted by air, but we just realized and recognized with that boil water advisory that not only Detroit was affected, but Highland Park, Michigan, and Hamtramck, Michigan. Those are 3 cities. And State Representative Sherry Dagnogo, she just announced and created a press release saying that even though we knew it was Detroit, Hamtramck, and Highland Park, that the Detroit Water and Sewage Department didn't even tell us all the areas that were actually affected and impacted. So it could be even more places that were impacted, and we were drinking that water with bacteria that came from an infrastructure failure. Water is an issue that poor people just don't want to pay, because as we know, 1/3 of our land is in the Detroit Land Bank. We have enough emptiness and abandonment in Detroit that you can fit the city of Miami or the city of San Francisco into Detroit and fill it with that population of those cities. We also know that 1/3 of our land is owned publicly. So what we can do is we can challenge our government, and we can challenge these institutions by using our voice to do something about that. And it's so important, people, that we learn not to silo our work. Because if we're siloing our work and we're fighting amongst one another, what is more important? Sorry about that. Then who is our target? Who are we pushing for to make the changes that we want to see? Are we pushing for our next door neighbor who is dying from asthma or cancer? Are we looking at the woman next door who have reproductive issues because her water is contaminated, or because the sewer is backing up in her backyard, or every time it rains she has a stream flooding? Are we telling them that don't matter? Because in Southwest Detroit, you may be dying of cancer and asthma, but in Northeast Detroit, and you have contaminated water sinking in your basement, you may be dying from arsenic, lead, and cyanide. These are issues that impact people. Until we learn that everything that we do is people-centered, and we need every person across the aisle fighting for us. I don't care if you don't care about my grandmother and that she died from asthma because of the cancer, that came from the community. If you're fighting to shut down Line 5, we on the same fight. If you're fighting to make sure that water affordability is something that is a priority in our city because 7 people on your block have some food or waterborne disease, I'm fighting with you because it's all about building that political power at the end of the day. And we have to do that as organized people. Because if we don't have money, like I said, we better have the people.
And Guy, you want to chime in here?
Sure, and I thank you, Dorothea, for your point about we're part of a whole, right? One of my favorite Bible passages is about Paul writing to Corinthians about parts of the body. The eye can't say to the ear, you're not part, and things like that, right? We're all woven together here, and as my friend Rashida told us earlier, our water department, it stretches all the way to Flint. Everybody knows that by now. Pontiac, Ypsilanti. It's all connected. So if you're in Farmington Hills, you're pretty much almost in the middle of the entire infrastructure that's tied together water-wise. And one of the reasons why my organization, Detroit is Working for Environmental Justice, started the Detroit Climate Action Collaborative. I see our great leader over here, Kimberly, our Director of Policy, is because there are some interrelated issues that have to be woven into solutions that are complementary. Get out your calendars one more time. If you're available Saturday morning from 10 to noon, get this, at Good Cakes and Bakes, we're having our monthly Climate Ambassadors meeting. And what's going on there is learning what you can do in your yard, in your neighborhood, in your block to help keep the water in your yard, in your neighborhood, on your block, and not in Del Rey. That's really the bottom line of it. It's going to be in Del Rey, and when it starts overflowing, it's going to be sewage in Fox Creek on the east side. It's going to be coming down in all different directions. That's what we're facing here. So we're all part of the solution, or we're all part of the problem. 19363 Livernois. That's the address. 19363, 10 o'clock Saturday. Come out and learn about that. I think it's no more than about 15 minutes from Farmington Hills.
Okay, so, sorry. We have a bunch of more note card questions, and again, most of these have to do with what can we do. And so I'm going to try to get to them, but I just want to say to the panel, we have probably about 10 minutes before we need to open it up so the audience can actually engage, not just read note cards, but actually engage. And then we're going to have closing statements. Those will be about 2 to 3 minutes because there are also some folks who I'm sure want to take pictures with their member of Congress who is fighting so diligently for them in D.C. So the next question is, and I think this is important again because of the national perspective. So what can we do to confront the escalation in military spending, which is diverting resources away from additional critical issues such as climate change, pollution, and basic human needs? And that's kind of where we started, right? So I think it's important for us to make sure we get back to that. We're constantly tying those issues together.
So many of you listened and other you read about the State of the Union address from our newly elected president. And he made the comment, we in America don't win anymore, we need to win. And that with me as president, we're going to start winning. Well, this is part of staying woke. You can't win unless you're fighting, unless you're in a war. We've had some very strong contradictions in trying to figure out the agenda of our new president. One where he says, if you're a refugee and you are being attacked in a country like Syria, and you're trying to leave the country for the sake of you and your children, we don't want you in the United States. We're going to ban you and say, don't come here. And then he said he saw pictures of babies dying from being attacked with chemicals, and he was so moved that he bombed Syria. So we're trying to put our arms around what is the agenda, where is this president going? I'm not qualified or certified to be